At my dad's funeral, my GF whispered to her friend, "Can you believe he's crying like a child? It's giving me the ick." They snickered. I heard every word. The next morning, she found out what real loss felt like. My father was a good man. A quiet man. He taught me how to change the oil in a car, how to frame a wall, and how to treat people with respect, even when they didn't deserve it. He worked as a union carpenter for 40 years, and the calluses on his hands had their own stories to tell. When he passed away 2 weeks ago after a short, brutal fight with cancer, a part of me went with him. I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm his son. I loved him. The funeral was last Wednesday. It was a gray, cold day that matched the emptiness in my chest. I stood in the front row of the small chapel, my sister on one side, my mother on the other. Behind me somewhere was my girlfriend of 3 years, Jenna. She was there for support, or so I thought. I managed to hold it together through the service, through the procession to the cemetery, through the awkward handshakes and sad smiles from people I hadn't seen in years. But as my father's oldest friend, a man named George, stood up to give the eulogy, the dam inside me finally broke. He started telling a story about my dad teaching him how to fish when they were just kids, and the memories came flooding back. Me as a boy on a boat with my dad, the smell of lake water and sunscreen, his patient hands guiding mine as I baited a hook. The tears came. Not loud, sobbing tears. Just silent, hot tears that tracked down my face. It was a raw, helpless grief. In that moment, I was just a son who missed his dad. And that's when I heard it. It was a whisper, right behind me. So close I could feel the warmth of the breath. It was Jenna, talking to her friend and bridesmaid, Maya, who had come with her. "Can you believe he's crying like a child?" Jenna whispered, her voice laced with a kind of baffled disgust. "It's giving me the ick." Then a sound that will be burned into my memory forever, a soft, suppressed snicker from Maya. The world went silent. The grief, the sadness, the entire funeral just vanished. It was replaced by a feeling I had never experienced before. A white-hot, perfectly clear rage that was so intense it felt like ice. The tears on my face felt like they were freezing. I didn't turn around. I didn't move a muscle. I just stood there, staring at my father's casket, and listened to George finish his story. I shook hands, I accepted condolences, I even hugged my mother. But I wasn't really there. My mind was already somewhere else, working with a cold, mechanical precision. She thought my grief, my love for my father was an ick. She found my humanity repulsive. I had been planning on giving this woman my last name, my future, my life. And in the most vulnerable moment I had ever endured, she had shown me exactly who she was. The rest of the day is a blur. I remember the drive to my mom's house for the reception. I remember Jenna trying to hold my hand in the car, and the instinctive way I pulled it away, blaming it on needing to shift gears. I remember her and Maya in a corner of the living room, scrolling through their phones and looking bored while my family shared memories of my dad. She thought she was being subtle. She had no idea I was watching her every move, not as her grieving boyfriend, but as a strategist assessing an enemy. She had just declared war at a funeral, and she didn't even know it. I went home that night to the apartment I owned, the one she had moved into 2 years ago. She came with me, talking about some drama at her work, completely oblivious. She fell asleep around 11. I didn't sleep at all. I just sat in the living room in the dark, and I made a list. The next morning, I was going to teach her the meaning of real loss. Update 1. The morning after my father's funeral was the first morning of the rest of my life. I was up before the sun, moving with a purpose I hadn't felt in years. The grief for my dad was still a heavy cloak, but the cold fire of a new resolution burned underneath it. Jenna was still asleep in my bed. My bed. In my apartment. I looked at her for a long moment. This stranger who had snickered at my pain. There was no love left. There was nothing. Just a problem to be solved. My first move was silent and digital. I opened my laptop at the kitchen table. Jenna had a supplementary credit card on my main account. An emergency card that she used for brunches with Maya, for new clothes, for salon appointments. I logged into my bank's website. 2 clicks. Card canceled. User removed. Done. Next, the joint savings account. We had one, intended for a down payment on a future house. I had contributed 90% of the funds. I did a quick calculation and transferred my entire contribution, plus half of the accrued interest, into my personal checking account. I left her 10%, exactly what she had put in. It amounted to a few $1,000s, a parting gift. Then the car. Jenna drove a nice SUV. It was a year old. It was also legally my nice SUV. The title was in my name, the loan was in my name, the insurance was in my name. I had bought it for her so she would have a reliable vehicle. She made a small payment to me each month, far less than what a real lease would cost. I found the spare key in the junk drawer. I went outside into the cold morning air and drove the car to a dealership a few miles away that specialized in buying used vehicles. I knew the manager. I told him I needed to sell it fast. He said he could have the paperwork and a check ready by the end of the day. I handed him the key and took an Uber back to my apartment. By the time I got back, it was 7:30. Jenna was still asleep. That's when I started on the physical part of the eviction. I went to the hall closet and pulled out a box of heavy-duty black trash bags. If she thought my emotions were garbage, then her possessions could be treated the same way. I was methodical. I started with her closet. The designer dresses, the dozens of pairs of shoes, the handbags that cost more than my first car. I didn't fold them. I just pulled them from the hangers and stuffed them into the bags. Her side of the bathroom was next. The endless bottles of creams and lotions, the expensive makeup, the hair products, all of it swept into a bag. I went through the entire apartment, a silent whirlwind of disposal. Every book, every trinket, every photo of us in a silver frame. I packed it all. By 9 o'clock, there was a mountain of black trash bags piled in the middle of the living room. It was a monument to a dead relationship. That's when she finally woke up. She walked out of the bedroom, yawning, stretching, and stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the scene. What is going on?" she asked, her voice thick with sleep and confusion. "Are we cleaning?" I didn't turn around. I just kept tying the top of the last bag. "No," I said, my voice calm and even. "You are leaving." She laughed, a nervous, uncertain sound. "What are you talking about, Jake? Is this a joke? It's not funny." I finally turned to face her. I made sure my expression was completely blank. "I'm not joking. I overheard you at my father's funeral yesterday. I heard what you said to Maya. I heard you laugh." The color drained from her face. For the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine panic in her eyes. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" I took a step closer. "Let me remind you. Can you believe he's crying like a child? It's giving me the ick. Does that ring a bell?" She just stared at me, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "You stood behind me while I was mourning my father, the man who welcomed you into his home, and you mocked me." I continued, my voice still quiet, but hard as steel. "You found my grief, for the most important man in my life, to be an ick. So I'm doing you a favor. I'm removing the source of your discomfort from your life. Me. And since I am the source of everything else in your life, this apartment, that car, that credit card, all of that is being removed as well." She finally found her voice. "You can't do this. This is insane. It was a stupid comment. I was emotional." "No, I was emotional," I corrected her. "You were cruel. And now you have to deal with the consequences. Your supplementary card has been canceled. The car you were driving is currently being sold. Your belongings are in these bags. You have 1 hour to call your friend Maya and have her come pick you and your things up. Then you will give me the key to this apartment, and you will leave." The tears started then. Big, dramatic crocodile tears. "Jake, please, I'm sorry. I didn't mean it. I love you." I just looked at her, completely unmoved. "You know, Jenna," I said, my voice dropping to a near whisper, "watching you cry right now, it's giving me the ick." The look on her face was worth 1,000 empty apologies. The hour that followed was a masterclass in frantic desperation. She called Maya, screaming into the phone. She tried to bargain with me, to reason with me, to rage at me. I just sat on a kitchen stool drinking a cup of coffee and watched. When Maya arrived, her face a mask of fury, they both started in on me. "You are a monster for doing this to her," Maya yelled. "Am I?" I asked calmly. "Or am I just a guy who decided he doesn't want to spend his life with someone who finds his love for his dead father disgusting?" They had no answer for that. It took them nearly an hour to haul all 37 trash bags of her life out of my apartment and stuff them into Maya's small SUV. When they were finally done, Jenna stood in the open doorway, her face a mess of tears and makeup. She threw her apartment key on the floor. "You will regret this," she hissed. "No, Jenna," I said, looking her dead in the eye. "You already do." Then I closed the door and locked it. I stood there for a long time, listening to the silence. It wasn't the empty silence of loss. It was the clean, quiet silence of freedom. Update 2. The week after the eviction, as I've come to think of it, was a strange one. I was dealing with the logistics of my father's estate, which was a heavy but necessary task. It kept my mind busy. Every form I filled out, every account I closed, felt like an act of honoring him. And every night, I would come home to my quiet, Jenna-free apartment and feel a sense of profound relief. I had expected a counterattack, and it didn't take long to arrive. The initial assault was digital, a barrage of texts and calls from blocked numbers, voicemails from Jenna, alternating between hysterical sobbing and venomous rage, messages from Maya, calling me an unstable psycho who needed serious help. I deleted them all without listening to them fully. Then, the narrative began to form. They launched a coordinated smear campaign among our mutual friends. The story they were spinning was a work of fiction. Apparently, I had suffered a complete mental breakdown due to my father's death. In my grief-stricken, unstable state, I had a psychotic episode and violently threw the loving, supportive Jenna out onto the street for no reason at all. They were worried about me. They were scared of what I might do next. It was a clever strategy. It painted me as the villain and her as the martyred saint who had endured my instability. A few of our mutual friends, the ones who were more her friends than mine, bought it completely. I got a few concerned yet accusatory text messages. "Dude, are you okay? Heard you went off the deep end. Kicking Jenna out was not cool." I knew I couldn't let this narrative take root. I had to fight back, but not on their terms. I wasn't going to get into a public shouting match. My revenge needed to be like a sniper shot, one clean, precise action that would end the war. I remembered something from the funeral. As I was standing there, crying, my cousin Sarah was standing just a few feet away. She had come over and given me a hug right after George's eulogy. She was closer to Jenna and Maya than I was. There was a chance she had heard it too. I called her. I didn't beat around the bush. "Sarah, I need to ask you something important. At Dad's funeral, when George was speaking, I was pretty broken up. I know you were standing near me. Did you happen to overhear Jenna say anything?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Oh, Jake," she said, her voice full of pity. "I didn't want to be the one to tell you. I heard it all. I couldn't believe it. I told Mom about it on the way home. We were disgusted." Bingo. I had a witness, and not just any witness, a member of my own family. My next call was to our one key mutual friend, a guy named Mark, who was the social hub of our group. "If you wanted a story to spread, you told Mark." "Mark," I said, "I know you're hearing a lot of crazy stories right now. I just want to tell you the truth. Once, so you have it. At my dad's funeral, while I was crying during the eulogy, Jenna leaned over to Maya and said, 'Can you believe he's crying like a child? It's giving me the ick.' My cousin Sarah was standing right there and heard it too. That is why she is no longer in my life. That is the whole story." The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. I could practically hear the gears turning in his head. The vague story of my breakdown versus a direct, shocking quote corroborated by a witness. There was no contest. "She said that?" he finally asked, his voice full of disbelief. "At a funeral?" "Yes," I said. "That's who she is." It took less than 48 hours for the truth to dismantle their web of lies. The story of what Jenna said and where she said it was so monstrous, so indefensible, that it completely annihilated her victim narrative. The concerned texts I was getting turned into messages of support. A few people even sent me apologies for doubting me. Jenna and Maya were exposed for the callous, cruel people they were. The desperation from Jenna's end escalated. A few days later, I got a frantic call from the building manager of my apartment complex. Apparently, Jenna had shown up with a locksmith, claiming she was a legal resident who had been illegally locked out. Thankfully, I had already sent him an email the week before, informing him that she was no longer living with me and was not on the lease. He had denied the locksmith entry and threatened to call the police if she didn't leave the property. Her attempt to publicly humiliate me and force her way back in had failed spectacularly. The final pathetic attempt came in the form of a legal-looking letter. It was from a cheap letter-for-hire law office. It was a demand for financial restitution. It claimed she was entitled to half the value of the SUV, a cash settlement for emotional distress, and 3 months of spousal support to help her get back on her feet. It was a joke, but a joke that needed to be answered. I forwarded it to my family's lawyer, the same one who was handling my father's estate. His response was a work of art. It was a single page. It stated, in no uncertain terms, that Jenna had no legal claim to any of my assets. It reminded her that she was a guest in my home, not a legal tenant. It then included a formal invoice for $1,500, the cost of her portion of the rent and utilities for the final month she lived in my apartment, which she had not paid. The letter concluded by saying that we would be happy to waive the invoice in exchange for her ceasing all further contact. But if she chose to pursue her baseless legal claims, we would aggressively countersue for that amount, plus all associated legal fees. The silence that followed was absolute. The war was over. I had won. Final update. It's been 6 months. The leaves have turned, fallen, and the first snow is on the ground. The sharp edges of the grief for my father have softened, replaced by a warm, enduring sense of his presence in my life. The drama with Jenna feels like it happened to someone else in another lifetime. Life, as it turns out, goes on, and it gets better. So much better. I never heard from Jenna or her lawyer again after that final letter. The invoice was, unsurprisingly, never paid. But the harassment stopped. That was payment enough. I heard about her life in bits and pieces, through the grapevine of old mutual friends. Her downfall was not swift and dramatic. It was a slow, quiet, and pathetic collapse. After wearing out her welcome on Maya's couch in less than a month, she had no choice but to move back in with her parents. The independent, sophisticated life she had built for herself was revealed to be a fragile facade, held up entirely by my income and my stability. She had to get a job, a low-level administrative position that paid a fraction of what she was used to spending on a single shopping trip. The new SUV was gone, replaced by an old, beat-up sedan her parents gave her. The brunches, the salons, the designer clothes, all gone. Her social life withered. Maya and her other friends, the ones who enabled her cruelty, slowly drifted away. They were attracted to the lifestyle she had with me. When the lifestyle disappeared, so did they. The irony is almost poetic. The woman who found real emotion icky is now living a life devoid of any real joy or substance. She is trapped in a state of perpetual dissatisfaction, a prisoner of the superficial values she held so dear. Her life is, by her own definition, one giant ick. As for me, I've been rebuilding. I sold my apartment in the city and bought a small house with a bit of land, the kind of place my dad always dreamed of having. I've been spending my weekends working on it, getting my hands dirty, building something real and lasting. My cousin Sarah and I have become closer than ever. My family, my real family, has been my rock. I've also started a foundation in my father's name. It provides scholarships for young people who want to go into the skilled trades like carpentry. It's a way of honoring his legacy, of turning my loss into something positive for others. It's the most fulfilling thing I've ever done. I saw Jenna once, a few weeks ago. I was at a home improvement store loading bags of soil into the back of my truck. She was pulling into the parking lot in her old sedan. Our eyes met for a brief second through her windshield. I saw a flicker of something in her face, shock, shame, maybe even regret. She quickly looked away and drove to the far end of the parking lot. I didn't feel a thing. No anger, no sadness, not even pity. It was like looking at a stranger. The hold she had on me was completely gone. She was just a person I used to know, a footnote in a chapter of my life that was now closed. The ultimate revenge wasn't in the canceled card or the repossessed car. It wasn't in the social humiliation or the legal threats. The ultimate revenge was my own peace. It was in discovering that the life she tried to tear down was just a house, and I was the foundation. I could rebuild, stronger and better than before. She mocked me for crying at my father's funeral. She saw my love as a weakness, but she was wrong. That love, that grief, was a sign of my humanity. It was the source of my strength. And in the end, it was the thing that saved me from a life with someone who would never understand what it means to truly lose something, because she never truly valued anything. She lost me, but I gained myself back. And that's a trade I'd make every single time.